So I think it's finally time I make a part 2 to this video series, UFC fighters with no aura. Now listen, what is aura? I have no idea. I have actually no clue what aura really even is, but guess what? I still have some little bit of an idea of what can define what the term aura is. And when I watch certain fighters, I can see it, I can tell, I can point it out that they have no aura. Nothing about them feels badass in a certain way. I just know what fighters have aura and what don't. So for today's video, I'm going to go through every single weight class and pick out the fighter that I believe has the most negative aura or no aura in that weight class. It's a pretty simple idea and we'll get right into it. So now that we're here, you see the black screen next to me. I'm going to unveil every single fighter one by one who I believe has the most no aura or just no aura in their weight class. I guess the right phrase would be the least amount of aura in their weight class. Sorry, but you get the idea. You understand what I'm talking about. Let's get right into this. Now, starting off with flyweight, we do have getting pretty hot already, huh? We have Mokaev. Now, this might be cheating. I don't know, because Mokaev technically is not in the UFC anymore, but I still believe he's on the roster. I do believe he still is ranked on the UFC website, just isn't re-signed yet. And maybe he might get re-signed in the future. We'll see how things play out. But Mokaev, in my opinion, as things stand, as currently as I am making this video, as today, well, I believe today is August 7th, he has no aura. Let's be real here. This guy's fighting style is dog shit. And now he's on Twitter, being on set, making a whole apology video, talking about how he wants to be in the UFC still. Come on, man. Where's your aura at? Where did it all go? Now you have pretty much none. I mean, let's get really serious here. Mokaev, his fighting style is very, very bitch made. Let's be real here. The whole I'm going to shoot a takedown on you and then fail it and then sit here and with one knee on the ground, with one hand on the ground so you can't knee me in the face is a pretty bad shtick for Mokaev. The whole backstage wannabe tough guy, I'm going to fight you here but not in the octagon. The whole sucker punching of Manel Cap. This guy lost a lot of aura, a ton of aura, especially now that he's been kind of cut from the UFC per se. Yeah, he's already Dagestani. He also is British. That's already a lot of aura points lost, in my opinion. Sorry, guys. As an American here, you know how I feel about those redcoats. Oh, God. So pretty much Mokaev has a pretty bad fighting style. He also is British by nationality. So I'm sorry to tell you guys, but all my British fans out there, I appreciate you. Thank you for watching the channel. But he loses aura points for that. But moving on from Muhammad Mokaev, up next at the bantamweight division, we do have the man himself, Chiweewees. I can't do a good impression of it. It's bad, but I think the whole Chiweewees things with Raul Rosas Jr. makes him lose a lot of aura. He's also very young. I believe he is like 18, 19. I think he's 19 now, maybe even 20. I don't know how old he is exactly, but the fact that he's young, it means that he hasn't had enough time to really develop his aura just yet. He needs to get some wins, some more KOs, and get older in general, and I think he'll start garnering some more aura. But as of right now, I mean, look at him. He has no aura. If I saw Raul Rosas Jr. in a grocery store, I would not be intimidated by the slightest. If I didn't know that this guy could possibly whoop my ass in a fight, and I just saw him out in everyday life, I would feel no fear from Raul Rosas Jr. That could be a good thing as well. Maybe he's a nice guy. Maybe he's a pretty chill dude. I wouldn't mind hanging out with him from time to time in real life, if I'm being honest with you. But I think when it comes to fighter aura at bantamweight, I think he's not really the most intimidating. Again, this grappling heavy style, I'm going to lay him prey on your back. He does get finishes though. He did finish a guy by a punch. I forget his name, but that guy had no aura as well. So, I mean, let's be real here. Chiweewees is not carrying the most amount of aura right now in the UFC, especially at bantamweight. However, I do like Chiweewees. I find his whole shirt brand Chiweewees thing shtick pretty funny. I'm not going to lie to you. I think he is funny and he has potential to be good in the UFC in the future because he is so young right now. So we'll see how he carries out his career. But I think as of right now, he has literally no aura because of his Chiweewees shtick. But moving on to featherweight. And featherweight is kind of difficult because I feel like a lot of featherweight fighters just all kind of carry some amount of aura. I mean, Topuria has aura. I mean, Ortega might not have any aura. That might be somebody I could have put here, but, you know, it is what it is. I feel like Yair has some aura. I think Volk has aura. I think everybody, Max Holloway, of course, has some aura. Like, a lot of these guys who are top ranked and even, like, down the rankings, even unranked fighters at featherweight do carry some aura. but I feel like there's just one guy and one version of a guy that I believe just really had no aura, and that is good old pre-hairline. To be in fact, it's pre-hair transplant Damon Jackson. Now, post-transplant Damon Jackson has some aura now. I think that hairline has given some aura back to Damon Jackson here, but before the hair transplant, this guy, this guy had no aura, man. It was lacking hard. Not much muscle mass on him either. No hairline, grappling style. I mean, just look at him. Is this a guy who you think carries a lot of aura? No. But now, maybe nowadays with this hair transplant, now he has a hairline, maybe we can give Damon Jackson some more respect and say he actually does have some aura. But I think as of right now, Damon Jackson, or back then, sorry, Damon Jackson was lacking a lot of aura. And he's been KO'd a few times, out cold especially, so that loses some aura points. I mean, it's a pretty tough draw for Damon Jackson here. I'm choosing an older version of him because featherweight right now is just so stacked with aura guys that I have to go with Damon Jackson pre-hair transplant. It's tough. But whatever, we'll move on from Damon Jackson here. We'll go on to lightweight, and I picked a good old Grant Dawson. Now, Grant Dawson, he just looks like a guy who is just too overtly friendly. He feels like that high school nerd, like that one friend you had in high school who just was a really chill dude, but like was kind of like in his own little world when it came to being like a wrestling kid. I don't know. It's hard to really explain. It just really feels like Grant Dawson is that outside kid, had his own little niche group of nerd friends in high school, which is fine. Those dudes are actually pretty underrated and they're actually pretty cool people. No lie, I'm not shitting on him for being that kind of guy, but I have to acknowledge that those kind of guys had no aura in high school or like even today. Like he feels like that one, like just that random anime kid who did impression. I don't know. It just feels like, I don't know. It just feels like Grant Dawson is just stuck in 2015, which is not a knock on him. I don't want to be too mean to Grant Dawson because I bet he is a really nice guy and probably a really chill dude. But I think in terms of, does he carry aura? Is he intimidating in the UFC? Does he really make you worry about getting KO'd? No, it just doesn't. All of his interviews, it feels like he's just a really nice guy. I know it's hard to really explain because basically what I'm saying here is that if you're a nice guy, you have no aura. That's not the case. You can still be a nice guy and have aura. But it just when I see Grant Dawson be a nice guy, he just doesn't have any aura. I can't really explain it, guys. I think you know what I mean. If you listen to any Grant Dawson interview or just when he talks in general, post-fight speeches, it feels like he just really lacks an aura. And I think the Bobby Green KO just wiped any residue of aura that he had left and just threw it in the trash pretty much. So I'm picking Grant Dawson. You could pick somebody else. I don't know. It is what it is, but we'll move on to the next fighter. And I believe that is at welterweight, good old Neil Magny. Just Neil Magny, again, probably a nice guy, but in terms of fighting style and fighting aura, he has none of it. He's a clinch god. He is the man who can make a fight so boring just by only clinching. And it sucks because I think Neil Magny was done wrong by Ian Gary. But if we just take out the whole Ian Gary situation, Neil Magny never had any aura. Now, he did beat Mike Mallet, which you could say has garnered him some aura. But I think he's still lacking in the aura department just because of his fighting style is really, really boring, and he's not really an intimidating guy whatsoever. Again, if I saw Neil Magny in a grocery store, I would just move on about my day. I wouldn't even acknowledge him. Now, I know who he is, so I would be like, is that fucking Neil Magny? So I might be inclined to approach him. But if I didn't know anything about UFC, I wouldn't even like be intimidated whatsoever about Neil Magny if I saw him bagging my groceries at Kroger or something. Neil Magny is just a regular dude, which is cool, but I don't think that gives you any aura in terms of a UFC fighter. And when it comes to his fights and even his walkouts, there's just nothing that really screams aura at you whenever he's coming to the cage. I feel like it's really easy for fighters to gain some aura whenever they're doing their walkouts to the cage, but I feel like Neil Magny's always gets skipped, or if we do end up seeing it, it's just like, no, it's Neil Magny. Let's go. Neil Magny fight. Whatever. It might be boring. You know, that's kind of like the whole feel around Neil Magny is the fact that he doesn't really carry any aura and he does have boring fights from time to time. But that's my whole take with Neil Magny. We'll move on to our next fighter, and that is at middleweight, Jack Hermansson. Now, middleweight, actually, it's kind of hard to really figure out who has no aura at middleweight. I was thinking Marvin Vettori at one point, but Vettori's chin alone pretty much carries aura. That man cannot be KO'd. I feel like Cannonier has some aura to him. I think Adesanya, as much as weird as he is, does carry some aura. Obviously, Dricus du Plessis carries some aura. Sean Strickland carries some aura. There is one other fighter at middleweight who I believe does have lower aura than Jack Hermansson, but it might be a spoiler. He might be in the next weight class. But I think Jack Hermansson overall just doesn't really carry too much aura. He can be cool and he can have some aura moments, but overall Jack Hermansson just is a basic guy. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's a basic, probably chill dude. Like, I would probably have a beer with Jack Hermansson, but I wouldn't be, again, scared of him. And again, back to the whole UFC walkout point, I don't ever feel hyped or excited for a Jack Hermansson walkout before he gets into the cage. I just don't find Jack Hermansson particularly too interesting. But you know what? He does have his aura moments. Beating Joe Pyfer, I think, gave him some aura, but also throwing a whole fight away against Roman Dolidze lost him some aura points. And you know what? Speaking of Roman Dolidze, he is my next fighter here at light heavyweight who I gave lower aura than Jack Hermansson. I feel like he also has no aura. Now, you could argue he has some because of the fact that he was able to steal, what's his name, JP Bays' woman from him. You know, maybe that gives him some aura points. He's out here, Mr. Steal Your Girl, Roman Dolidze. That could give him some aura points, but I think overall, Dolidze, man, dude can't strike. He can't really get any offensive takedowns. The man is reliant on jiu-jitsu. His fights are pretty stinky. You know, like, overall, Roman Dolidze just doesn't really do it for me in terms of the aura category. I mean, you know what? Look at him. He's Georgian. He has hair on him. He looks like a Chad a little bit at times. So, like, his look kind of gives off aura. But I think in terms of the UFC cage, man, that's where it kind of just goes away. I think once you figure out who Roman Dolidze is in the octagon, you're like, damn, this guy isn't scary at all. You know what I'm saying? Just if Dolidze did more in the octagon, I think he would have some aura. But I think just overall, he just doesn't really do it for me. But today I decided to be nice and I lumped Dolidze into light heavyweight or middleweight, whichever one you prefer. And I did two technically light heavyweights. And the other one, who I believe is or has no aura at light heavyweight, is good old Anthony on paper Smith. This guy is called Lionheart, but yet he gives up. Dillashaw, you were right. Don't let anybody tell you you weren't right about Anthony Smith. He does give up in his fights. The whole home invasion thing, I think he might have played up a little bit. This dude might have been yanking his own chain there and trying to like play himself up a little bit when it came to the whole fighting in home invader. He still believes he could be a UFC champion. It's just that everything that Anthony Smith does or that he says, he just continues to lose aura every single time he opens his mouth and has some sort of take. And it's like he believes these certain, like, he's a bit delusional is what I'm trying to get at here. And Anthony Smith, man, like, respect to him for believing these things, man. But every single time he talks, he just loses aura. Every single time he fights, like he just fought Roman Dolidze in an absolute stinker that possibly ruined the whole main card. Like, he just loses aura every single time he does something that's UFC related or fighting related. And it's just like, I'm sorry, Anthony Smith, man, but on paper, you just have no aura. But now let's move on to our final weight class at heavyweight. The fighter that I believe has the least amount of aura in this weight class is good old Shamil Gaziev. Now, let's be real here. Good old Lucas Tracy alone made this guy a meme. He is now called Shamil the Blob Gaziev because of Lucas Tracy. And I think that alone just killed this man's aura. The mouth breathing, bro, he's auraless at this point, man. He came into the UFC and maybe he had some aura because of where he's from. And, you know, he's a heavyweight. He's a big dude. But, oh my God, dude, the constant mouth breathing, bro, and the way that he fights, bro, it's just, there's no aura packed into that. As big as Shamil Gaziev is, there's not a single picogram of aura in his body, I don't think. And if there was some aura left into Shamil Gaziev, the whole meme about him has now destroyed anything left that could be considered aura inside of Shamil Gaziev. All I pretty much have to say about Shamil Gaziev is that he's cooked, bro. He's actually fried rice. He's shrimp fried rice. Like, I can't say anything else about him because he just mouth breathes too much, man, in the octagon. And it's kind of funny, but you know what? He needs his extra gas tank. He needs that a little bit of extra O2 into his lungs, I guess. He needs to open up his lungs a little bit more because, god damn, he he has no gas tank whatsoever. But you know what? Shamil Gaziev, respect to him. Still a fighter, still respect. But yeah, he has no aura. That's pretty much it when it comes to Shamil Gaziev. So there you guys have it. That was every single UFC fighter in every single weight class that has the least amount of aura. If you enjoyed this video, give me a like, give me a sub, hit the bell icon for notifications as well. But I'm out of here, guys. Peace.